The second generation version of Kia's Proceed Coupe looks like a smart piece of business for its rapidly growing South Korean maker. It is a proper coupe too this time round, unlike the original version. Beautifully styled and ready to compete head-on with tough rivals in the affordable section of this market, cars like Vauxhall's Astra GTC, Seat's Leon SC and perhaps even the Volkswagen Scirocco. A top turbo GT flagship variant aims to snare performance people, but it's the lower powered Proceed models that'll make the numbers. Cars blessed with impressively affordable running costs and a very good after-sales package.
Forget what you thought you knew about Kia and take a look at one of these, the second generation Proceed Coupe. Smart, isn't it? But then you'll have been expecting that if you kept half an eye on this fast-growing South Korean maker over the last few years. This, after all, was the brand that brought us the funky Soul Super Mini, the slinky Sportage SUV and the cute Picanto city car. And before all of those, the first-generation version of this Proceed. Launched originally in 2008, this three-door coupe version of the Ceed family hatch was a turning point for Kia. The first model it had made that had that want one factor. It was a shocking departure for dealers used to the dull family fare that back then characterised the rest of the company's model lineup, and it paved the way for a subsequent range of desirable cars that have since doubled the company's worldwide sales. The only problem, though, with raising expectations is that subsequent products must more than meet them. Today, we expect something like this Mark II Proceed Coupe to be good right out of the box, to match, maybe even beat, established mainstream affordable coupe rivals like Vauxhall's Astra GTC and Volkswagen's Scirocco. We're not surprised when, like this design, the finished car can offer eye-catching looks with the contrary requirements of a practical cabin and offer strong performance despite an impressively low set of running costs. All this sounds good on paper, but how will this car perform in practice? Let's find out. There are two kinds of Proceed driving experience, and it's very much horses for courses. If you've opted for the top turbo GT version, there's everything needful for the full-fat performance driving regime. Recaro seats, stainless steel pedals, red stitching on the steering wheel, and even on top versions, a TFT instrument screen showing torque, turbo boost, and engine coolant temperature. Here, though, I've opted for one of the more ordinary models aimed at people who simply want the style of this car without the extremes of speed that can potentially come with it. Given that, there isn't much point in complaining that it doesn't feel especially sporty here, though these front seats do have a heavily bolstered, deep-sided shape that offers plenty of support, and they feel great over longer trips. The ride and handling balance in this case is also aimed at day-to-day usability rather than on-the-limit handling, but it's a well-developed package that, even when provoked, steadfastly refuses to do anything unexpected, cornering confidently with well-suppressed body roll and plenty of grip. The long wheelbase helps ride quality, with only lumpy B-roads showing up any flaws in its deportment. Though the 6-speed manual gearbox isn't the slickest, the steering's nicely direct, even if lower powered variants don't offer a great deal of feedback. But in all Proceeds, you can try and do something about that thanks to the standard inclusion of Kia's Flex Steer system. It offers the driver a choice of normal, comfort or sport steering modes, something that's fun to experiment with via this button for the first few miles, but ultimately not of much use, given that comfort is rather too light and sport a bit heavy. Under the bonnet of standard variants, buyers get to choose between a 133 brake horsepower 1.6-litre GDI petrol unit, offered with the option of a Sprint sapping dual-clutch auto gearbox, or a 126 brake horsepower 1.6-litre CRDI turbo diesel, both capable of about 122 miles an hour flat out. On paper, the diesel gets there in a more leisurely fashion, the 0 to 62 mile an hour sprint taking 11.5 seconds as opposed to 9.8 seconds. But in practice, the CRDI model's greater reserves of torque, there's 96 newton meters more of it, make it feel a more willing companion. The diesel's heavier engine also puts a bit more weight over the front wheels, which makes the car feel slightly more positive when cornering. The top Proceed GT, of course, is in a different league. It's 201 brake horsepower turbocharged petrol 1.6, hurling the car to 62 miles an hour in 7.4 seconds on the way to 143 miles an hour. It's not quite enough to directly pitch this car against a really fast hot hatch like Vauxhall's Astra VXR or a really quick coupe like the Megane Renault Sport 265, but it's absolutely enough to enable this variant to compete on equal terms with much pricier performance coupes like Toyota's GT86 and Volkswagen's Scirocco GT 2-litre TSI. Opinion was divided as to whether the first generation Proceed was actually a coupe at all. Many simply saw it as a three-door version of the ordinary Seed family hatchback. This time round, though, there's no arguing the point, with the roof, the body sides and the rear end completely redesigned to suit a coupe clientele. The result is billed as Kia's most emotionally charged vehicle to date, penned in the words of Chief Design Officer Peter Schreier to show performance and dynamism from every angle, crease and curve. Whether or not you'd go as far as to agree with that, you can't deny that what we have here is undeniably a smart piece of styling, created by Europeans for Europeans. Built in Slovenia under the guidance of the Frankfurt-based Kia Motors Europe design team, its edgy, coupe-like shape is very different from that of the five-door Seed, despite the fact that the two cars share the same chassis. A sharply raised beltline and a neat crease leading into the rear arches are highlights of a longer and sleeker shape that's set 40mm closer to the ground. The front end's unique too, with a slightly narrower, gloss black finished version of Kia's now trademark tiger nose front grille, connected to the headlights with dark chrome extensions and set off by a more rakish lower bumper design. The rear end, meanwhile, is characterised by a steeply angled back window and prominent tail lamps that illuminate with a distinctive U-shaped LED pattern and sit astride broad shoulders. While we're here, let's have a look at boot space, accessible via a tailgate that's light and swings up easily. Though the boot lip is quite high, the space beyond it, 380 litres, is very competitive, the same as you'll find in comparable Vauxhall Astra GTC and Seat Leon SC models, but about 20% bigger than what you get in a rival Volkswagen Scirocco. Being also 40 litres more than the first generation Proceed could offer, it's also exactly the same size as that of the supposedly more practical five-door Seed. There's also a useful area beneath the boot floor. If you need more, the 60/40 split folding seat backs flatten to create a 1,225 litre total cargo area. That's 15 litres more than before, though the lower roofline will limit the size of what can be carried. Getting into the rear is made easier by front doors that are 270mm longer than those in the five-door Seed, though that might potentially be a problem in tight parking spaces. Once there, space for a couple of adults is reasonable on all but the longest journeys, providing occupants don't mind this slightly claustrophobic feel created by the high window line. Kia reckons you could fit 3 people back here, but that'd only be comfortably possible if the occupants in question were relatively small children. And at the wheel, well, base petrol and diesel versions of this Proceed don't feel quite as sporty to sit in as they do to look at. You'll need the top Turbo GT model if you want that. Still, even in a more affordable variant like this one, it's all nicely laid out and feels of high quality. Everything falls neatly to hand, and soft touch plastic combines with chromed accents to create a cool, relaxed ambience. expect to pay somewhere in the £18,000 to £23,000 bracket for your Proceed, which means pricing that's only a few £100s more, model for model, than a comparably equipped mid-spec version of the Seed hatch on which this coupe is based. There's a £1,000 premium to pay if you want to graduate from the 1.6 litre GDI petrol model to the 1.6 litre CRDI diesel that I've got here. It's the base petrol variant that you're going to need if you want the option of automatic transmission. And to complete the picture, you'll need at least a £20,000 budget for the hot hatch turbocharged petrol GT model. So, how does that stack up in an increasingly crowded marketplace for affordable coupes of this kind? Pretty well, I think. Vauxhall's Astra GTC is an obvious rival, and it'll cost you around £1,500 or so more model for model. Volkswagen's Scirocco is even costlier, £3,000 to £4,000 pricier, though in diesel form it does offer you a bit more power. This VW is even dearer than the Kia if, looking for something quick, you're pitching a Proceed GT against a comparable Scirocco GT 2-litre TSI. But I don't think there are going to be too many Volkswagen buyers looking at this South Korean contender. It's more obviously matched, I reckon, against a less well-known choice in the affordable coupe segment, Seat's Leon SC. As a petrol, a diesel, or as an FR 1.8 TSI hot hatch, the Seat is priced almost identically to the three versions of this Kia. The Leon's even a bit faster in its standard forms, but it's not as much of a looker, and that's crucial in this fashion-conscious market niche. Are there other rivals you should consider? Perhaps, but not for very long. To start with, you'd have thought that sister brand Hyundai's little coupe, the Veloster, a car that shares the same platform and the same engines as this Kia, would be pitched right against it. In the event, it can't be, because there's no diesel option and the top-of-the-range turbo version is slower but over £2,000 more expensive than a Proceed GT. Only the base 1.6 GDI petrol Veloster competes directly with this Kia, and even then it's around £500 more costly. What else? Well, equivalent versions of the Renault Megane Coupe are pricier, slower and more cramped in the back. The hybrid technology of a Honda CR-Z will cost you around £3,000 more than a base petrol Proceed. And if you're a potential Proceed GT buyer, comparing against the equivalently powerful design we know as either a Toyota GT86 or a Subaru BRZ, then you'll find that the Kia will save you around £5,000. If, having considered all of this, you conclude that it is a Proceed that you really want, then whichever 1.6 litre variant you choose, GDI petrol, this CRDI diesel, or turbo petrol GT, you're going to want to find a decent specification included as part of the deal. And by and large, you shouldn't be disappointed. All models get alloy wheels, LED daytime running lights and fog lamps, rear privacy glass, a chrome-tipped oval exhaust, power-folding electric mirrors and reverse parking sensors. Inside there's air conditioning, a decent quality 6-speaker stereo with steering wheel controls, plus iPod and USB connectivity, Bluetooth phone compatibility, a trip computer, cruise control with a speed limiter, plus Kia's Flex Steer system that lets you choose steering sensitivity, and Hill Start Assist control to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions. Plusher variants like this one get sat-nav, auto wipers and a reverse parking camera. Safety kit is the same whichever model you choose, so expect to find twin front, side and curtain airbags, ISOFIX child seat mountings, ESC electronic stability control and VSC vehicle stability management, the latter feature assisting you if you find yourself on a surface where one side of the car has more traction than the other, say when one side of the car is close to a grass verge. There's also ABS with brake assist for emergency stops that'll be advertised to following motorists by an ESS emergency stop signalling system that triggers the brake lights to flash when you suddenly slam on the anchors. You'll probably be pleasantly surprised at just how affordable this car will be to run. Something that comes courtesy of the standard inclusion of Kia's ISG Intelligent Stop and Go system across the range. This cuts the engine when you don't need it, say when you're stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. As a result, the 1.6-litre CRDI diesel variant is able to achieve an impressive 74.3 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 100 grams per kilometre of CO2. That's near identical to the returns posted by a rival Seat Leon SC 1.6 TDI, but 15 to 20% better than the figures that you'll get from the least expensive diesel versions of Vauxhall's Astra GTC and Volkswagen's Scirocco. The 1.6-litre GDI petrol Proceed variant can't get close to the returns of its diesel stablemate, of course, but its figures aren't too bad: 52.3 miles to the gallon and 124 grams per kilometre. That's pretty much the same as you get from a comparable Seat Leon SC 1.4 TSI 140, but about 10 to 15% better than you get from rival 1.4-litre petrol Vauxhall Astra GTC and Volkswagen Scirocco models. Bear in mind, though, that this base Proceed petrol model's returns take quite a hit if you specify the DCT dual-clutch transmission automatic gearbox that's only offered with this engine. Unlike some dual-clutch boxes that actually improve running costs, this one works the other way, reducing your figures to 46.3 miles to the gallon and 140 grams per kilometre of CO2. As for the flagship Proceed GT Turbo model, expect 38.2 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 171 grams per kilometre of CO2, which isn't bad for a 143 mile an hour performance coupe. Used values will continue to be propped up by Kia's excellent warranty arrangement, given that, unlike Vauxhall's lifetime warranty, it's fully transferable to second owners. It's worth pointing out, though, that the trumpeted 7-year, 100,000-mile package actually only covers the engine and gearbox. It's 100,000 miles and 5 years for everything else. Nevertheless, this promise of trouble-free motoring will be enough to tip the balance for many potential customers. Insurance ratings: 13 for the diesel, 14 to 15 for the petrol, and 29 to 30 for the Turbo GT are also very reasonable, based upon a low cost of repair and excellent safety provision. Servicing intervals, well, they're every 20,000 miles or 12 months, whichever comes sooner. And you can keep maintenance costs down by opting for either of Kia's Care 3 all-inclusive servicing packages that provide inflation-proof servicing costs for the first 3 or 5 years of the vehicle's life. In buying an affordable coupe, you used to have to choose between style and practicality. In other words, you either went for something that was little more than a slightly smarter version of a 3-door hatchback but offered decent space, or you chose a lower, slinkier look that'd be eye-catching in your driveway but pretty useless for either rear seat passengers or luggage. More recent arrivals in this sector, though, have shown themselves to be more adept at combining style with sensibility, and here's one of the best of them. In fact, this second-generation Proceed seems to be the real deal. It's reasonably priced, well-equipped, looks great, and is solidly built with an unbeatable after-sales package. What more do you want? More power? More speed? Both were lacking from the original version of this car, but are now provided by a turbocharged GT variant, ranking as the fastest model Kia has brought us to date. Now, you won't get those kinds of thrills from more ordinary Proceeds like the one I've been trying here. But then, red-blooded enthusiasts aren't the only people buying cars of this kind. Take young customers who'd like a racier look but don't want to be saddled with high insurance premiums. Or older customers who are attracted by the idea of a sporty coupe but don't want one with an uncomfortable and impractical low-slung feel. Both will find in the affordable Proceed variants a perfectly sensible proposition, but one with more than just a touch of flair. Exactly as we've come to expect from Kia.